Everybody. Today we're going to talk about the top 5 mistakes of building your customer success strategy. Now, where have I learned these? My experience, as Burke has said, has been over a decade of building and scaling customer success teams at some of the largest companies in the world. In addition to that, in my role as the founder and CEO of ClientSuccess, I have the fortunate privilege of having insights into customer success teams across hundreds of companies throughout the world. As we interact and as we see and as we have our own battle wounds of building and scaling customer success teams, I wanted to just share 5 top mistakes that we see companies make as they build their customer success strategy from the ground up. Now, I know in this audience, we may have CEOs, we may have VPs of customer success, we may have managers and directors of customer success, and we may have many customer success managers in the trenches, and we give huge shout out and kudos to those in the trenches. This webinar should apply to all of you. For CEOs, we encourage you to take note and take the lead and lead out in some of these recommendations. And if you're in the trenches, we encourage you to speak up and lead out as well, and help drive these top strategies across your organization. So with that, let's jump in and begin. So the first mistake that we typically see when organizations create a customer success strategy is that companies approach customer success as a fix. There's not a clear strategy. It's more of a reactive strategy to be a fix in the organization. Now, what do I mean by that? A lot of times we see out there that there are many aspects of customer success that impact customer success. I always say that customer success managers have the majority of the responsibility for retention and growth, but very little ability to impact the broader customer experience. And so a lot of times in organizations, as you're growing and scaling your company, you start to have these negative aspects impact your customers, such as you might have a bad product. Maybe you haven't reached product market fit. Maybe you're going through a period of challenges where your product is having growing pains, or a slowed development or innovation period, and those impact your customer. Maybe you as a CSMs are having to deal with missed sales expectations, to where your sales team has done a great job in selling, but maybe oversold a little bit here and there, and you're left holding that bag. Maybe you're selling to bad fit customers, that you're selling quickly, but not attracting and closing the right type of customers, or maybe your support experience is less than optimal. All of these issues are common throughout SaaS businesses and broader businesses throughout the world. But one challenge that we see is that there's a tendency from board pressure or customer pressure or other reasons. Some companies will implement customer success more as a Band-Aid. They don't have a proactive, very strategic objective. It's just that they need somebody some organization to take care of customers, to build a relationship and try to retain those customers despite all of the issues that are happening throughout the business. A big challenge with that is that we're strong believers. Our mission at ClientSuccess is building relationships that last, but we also believe strongly that results trump a relationship. You want to drive results, and on top of a great relationship, and that's the key. And sometimes you deploy customer success as a Band-Aid to try to fix all these other issues in the organization, rather than understanding the core diseases and addressing those. That commonly happens because our organizations are they're siloed, and you have many different departments that are working in their silos. They have their specific objectives and KPIs within those silos, but they are not collaborating and coordinating or aligned to core accountability and objectives and goals as a united company. that is one of the biggest challenges that we see, is that you see this siloed approach where everybody has their objectives, but they have no core objectives as an organization. So our recommendation is to find a way to break down those silos and ensure that you're all aligned around customer objectives, customer strategy, customer experience, that everybody's aligned, you're sharing same accountability, you're sharing core KPIs, and even performance objectives, and even comp objectives, in order to be aligned there. So you have a proactive strategy rather than implementing customer success as a fix. Now, one of the best companies that I've been a part of, that I've seen accomplish this and to drive this, to break down the silos, and to really make sure that everybody is aligned, is Adobe. Now, Adobe is built this program that was quite amazing. And I'm curious out there, I'll just ask a quick question on the chat. If anybody out there has been with Adobe and has gone through this customer immersion program. What they did is they implemented this program called a customer immersion program to really break down those silos and make sure everybody understands the customer experience. So what they did is they built out this immersion experience. They had every senior leader, and this is hundreds across the organization, go through a 2-day immersion program where they were to listen to the support reps. They were to read their contracts and their legalese to see if they could understand them. They were to visit customers or listen to have a conversation over the phone with them. They were to use the products extensively to see if they could accomplish goals and objectives within the products. They were to surf their site and experience their site, and really immerse in the program. And it was a broad initiative from the top down. So the Shantanu Narayan, CEO of Adobe, was out front and leading this and driving this initiative forward. It was tied directly to the executive compensation. Either all the executives got their bonus or none if you didn't achieve the objectives of the immersion program. It took 2 full days of immersion. It wasn't just an hour or 2 taken out of your day, but it was really full 2 days to immerse in the customer experience and to understand. And then it simulated the customer experience across the entire business. The goal was to create empathy, accountability, and change throughout all of Adobe. And that was what happened. As the executives went through and the leaders of the company went through this program, the barriers and the silos began to break down, because they realized that not only was the experience difficult for the customers, but they really weren't communicating or aligned internally. From then on out, that was a game-changing experience at Adobe as they shifted all of their business to the cloud and had to adopt this culture of customer success. This is an example of how you get aligned and how you build a strategy to where customer success is the strategy. It's not a portion of the strategy. It's not an afterthought, but customer success is the core of the strategy. And so I recommend if you're at a company, if you're a leader or a team member or a CEO of a company, that you feel that customer success is implemented as a fix, as a Band-Aid, then I really encourage you to put customer success at the center of your strategy. Encourage your leaders to get out in front of customers. Maybe create your own immersion program so that they have that empathy and you have this clean alignment and accountability across your organization, to be where customer success is no longer seen as a fix-it. It's seen as the strategy within the organization that everything is built from. Now, Burke, I know we have a quick poll, and wondered if we have any questions based on this section that anybody would like me to answer.
That's great. Yeah, Dave, perfect. Great intro into the top 5 mistakes in this first solution. So where should someone start? If they feel like maybe it's more sales focused, where should an organization start to really start putting this customer experience at the center? What's your thought on that?
I think the start comes from empathy, and I think that a lot of times it's done because we're making decisions based on in a reactive way, based on short-term results. But the organization doesn't really understand, and the easiest way to do that is get leaders and members of the team on the phone with customers frequently, or even better, out in front of customers. Have them sit in front of them, help them understand. Whether it even engineers, bring engineers out. Or leaders of your product team out, sit them in front of the customer and gain that empathy. And you'll start to see that very quickly that the silos break down and customer success start to be centralized in your strategy.
That's a great question. Let me just launch this poll real quick, and then I'll ask you one more question. So the poll will launch, which you'll see here. What part of the business presents the biggest challenges for your customer success team? We'll put that up here and you can start voting. And is it product? Is it customer support? Is it bad fit customers? Is it a poor sales experience? Is it onboarding, adoption? And then, do you believe you have a clear alignment and accountability around your customer success, around your company? Well, and then, so I think that you brought up a great point, Dave, which is having multiple people in the departments have an opportunity to talk to customers from a marketing side to development, to customer support, to sales, and even engineers. So that's a great thought. If you have a question, make sure you just kind of answer it in the Zoom webinar chat, and we'll answer it. It looks like. Can you see that the results of the poll, Dave, or do you want me to go through them?
Go ahead, Burke.
Okay, perfect. So it looks like when we answer this question, what part of your business presents the biggest challenges? It looks like the top one is adoption, followed by product. And then the next one after that would be a poor sales experience. And so that's kind of where we're at there.
Yeah, that's great.
72% of the people, or 64% of the people attending, believe they still are lacking that accountability and alignment of customer success across the company. So if you have any questions, make sure you ask a few of how to do this.
Sounds good. Thanks, Burke. So let me go on to the second one. The second top mistake that we typically see is letting your customer experience evolve organically. Now, what do I mean by that? Now, when I think of customer experience, I think about the broader experience that your customers that they experience throughout all of the touch points from marketing, from customer success, from product. It's every experience, it's every touch point, it's the sales process, it's the onboarding process. And too often, companies let that experience evolve organically. I always say to my team, if we don't manage our time will manage us. And that's the same with the customer experience. If we're not proactively designing and developing the customer experience, the customer experience will manage us. And unfortunately, a lot of times it will be a negative customer experience. So, and in a poll done by Bain & Company, they surveyed hundreds of CEOs, and they asked the CEOs about whether they feel like they are delivering a superior customer experience. In that poll, 80% of the CEOs felt like they were delivering an amazing experience, a superior experience. That's pretty impressive to have the CEOs believe that they're doing that. The problem is that when they went to ask their customers about the experience, only 8% of their customers agreed. So CEOs, 80% of the CEOs felt like that they're delivering an experience, but the customers didn't agree. And that's because a lot of the organizations feel like they built a customer experience, but they do it from an inside-out perspective. And they don't really truly have understand the voice of the customer, the experience of the customer. That's the biggest challenge we see out there. When that happens, when you let your customer experience evolve organically, this is what typically happens. And hopefully you kind of get this sense with these emojis. But basically you have customers on the far left, or prospects, who come in and they're curious about your product. They enter the sales process. They've maybe seen some marketing materials, and they start to get excited about the product. Maybe they've read some reviews and they start to get excited. After they go throughout the sales process at the very top, they are excited enough to go ahead and purchase your product. But then a lot of times what happens is you start to see this change of experience, where the reality of what they have purchased starts to set in, and they start having some challenges in the onboarding experience, or what they purchased wasn't exactly what they thought, or maybe they were oversold on something, and you start to see this decline where they start thinking, oh no, what did I get into? And then get angry, and then get furious, and this pre-sales anticipation turns into post-sales frustration. Now, on the other hand, if we can proactively design and raise the bar high on developing an amazing customer experience, then you deliver an experience like Tesla has. Now, I don't know how many out there are Tesla fans. I've been a big fan of Elon Musk and Tesla for a long time. My initial experience with Tesla was from afar. I heard great things. And then one time I was at my house doing some work on yard work on a Saturday, and all of a sudden my brother pulls up into a white Tesla like this. And he said he's test driving it because he's going to buy it, and he threw me the keys. And so I was pretty excited about that. And he said, let's go for a ride. And so I walked around this beautiful white Tesla. I loved the look and feel. I loved the wheels, I loved everything about it. I opened the door. I loved the monitor was bigger than my monitor at my desk at work. The leather was beautiful. I went to push the button to turn it on and didn't hear a sound, and everything was just so cool. And then I got in the car and we went for a drive, and I was amazed at the smoothness, about the experience. And about a mile out of our house, my brother stopped, and he said, okay, I want you to stop right here. And so I stopped. We were out on a country road, and he said, okay, I want you to punch it. And I said, what do you mean punch it? And he says, I want you to punch it as hard as you can. So I punched it as hard as I can. And at that moment, that's where I felt the initial closing exhilaration of Tesla. And this is what my face looked like. Because at that moment, I entered this concept of ludicrous speed on a Tesla, and I had an amazing experience. If for those who have never been in a Tesla, if you punch those and you put the gas pedal on it, it's zero. Somebody, Alicia said, 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds. It was amazing. It was exhilarating. And from that point on, I was a diehard advocate and fan of Tesla for life, because my experience in that experience was a little bit different. It went from this pre-sales anticipation to this post-sales exhilaration, and I loved the experience that I had in that Tesla, and the post-sales experience was even better than what I thought it was going to be. Those are the type of experiences that we all need to drive across our organizations. So I love what Jeff Bezos says. He says, we innovate by starting with the customer and working backwards. Notice he didn't say we innovate by starting with CHURN customers, or we innovate starting with prospects, or anything like that. We innovate by starting with customers and work backwards. So the solution for the next solution in making sure you deliver an amazing customer experience is to proactively design an extraordinary customer experience, to make sure that your organization is actively involved in designing an extraordinary experience that will give you that post-sale exhilaration versus that post-sales frustration. So Burke, what I want to do is, if you'll launch the next poll, we'll maybe take one quick question, and then we'll move on to number 3. So the poll that we wanted to ask you along with this one is, has your customer deliberately designed your overall customer experience or your customer journey? Or yes or no, or in the process? Or if you haven't, then I'm assuming that there's some of this that's being organically created. So if you'll take 1 minute to just answer that poll, Has your company deliberately designed your overall customer experience? Some people call it the customer journey map or other things, but has that been a deliberate process that you've done? Yes or no? Would love to get your feedback there.
So Dave, where would someone start if they were going to do this? Would you have them almost like get some Post-it notes and say, hey, it first starts with marketing, and this is how marketing is going to make a positive experience, and hey, from marketing it goes to the SDR team, or it goes to the development team, and then to sales, and then there's this handoff, and maybe this brainstorm, or how have you seen people get started? It looks like 65% of the people are still in process. And
Okay, hey, that's great. So to answer your question, Burke, I think one is from the solution number one was to start to break down the silos and develop empathy for the customer throughout your organization. That's the best way to start. The second way to start is to spend a couple full days in a room where you have Post-it notes and you map out the journey. And you map out everything, and you understand whose roles and responsibilities are for every part of the customer journey. What is the experience you want to deliver? What are the wow experiences? What are the key moments of truth? And the one thing that a lot of people forget to do is they forget to get the customer's input into the journey. Because again, the goal is to build it from the a perspective of outside in versus inside out. And so I'd recommend that. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in just 1 minute. Kudos to all of those who have already deliberately designed it. Those that are in process, keep it up. It's actually an ongoing thing. It's not a one and done experience. Designing and refining your customer's experience should be done ongoing throughout your company and be revisited several times a year.
Well, thanks, Dave. So it looks like we're about 12% had yes, and then 24% no, and the 65% are in the process. So good thoughts on that. Let's move on to challenge number 3 and your solution.
All right, number 3. Challenge number 3 is that companies focus too much on churn prevention. Now that might sound counterintuitive because we're talking to customer success professionals throughout the world, and one of the main responsibilities is retention. But I find that most times there are a lot of board members, maybe CEOs, other department leads, or others look to customer success as, quote, churn preventers. Whenever I hear this, that, hey, our customer success team, their main role and responsibility is to prevent churn, it boils my blood a little bit because we're so much more than that. And it makes me think of this phrase that John Madden, for those who are American football fans, John Madden was a legendary coach and broadcaster, sports broadcaster. He brought up this quote that I think is really appropriate here. He said, in speaking about a offensive approach to a football game versus a defensive approach to a football game, he said the only thing a prevent defense does is prevent you from winning. And I like that because I feel like a lot of customer success teams are running a prevent defense. That means in American football, a prevent defense means that you feel comfortable about your lead. And so instead of playing an aggressive offensive game plan, you start to go and be much more defensive. And you go into this prevent defense. And a lot of times when you go into a prevent defense, you go away from the things that make you successful and you get on the defensive, you end up losing the game anyways. And so my plea to everybody out there is to educate those around us that we are not just churn preventers. When I think of those that build a strategy around churn prevention, it reminds me of a scenario like this. It reminds me of like an emergency room doctor where you have all of these monitors and health scores and everything, but you're really focused on the negative, on churn and on risk prevention. And risk management. And if you build a strategy like that, then you end up having a team and a strategy where you end up being essentially emergency room doctors, and you're trying to bring back customers from the brink of death or churning. If you change the paradigm a little bit and you think of yourselves more as Olympic athlete trainers, or high-performing athlete trainers. In this situation, Olympic athlete trainers, their whole objective is to get the most out of the athlete, to help them reach their potential, to make them the best that they can be. And they do monitor. They have all kinds of monitoring and scores and other things, but it's monitoring their performance. It's monitoring the increased levels of performance and output and success. And that's the way we should do it. We should look at our instead of having churn scores, let's look at success scores. Let's look at held scores. Let's really have a proactive approach and a positive approach to customer success, where we're focusing on helping them achieve their objectives and becoming the best companies that they can be. And if we will do that, we will be much more successful than if we just focus on the reactive stuff. So my solution is drive an intense focus throughout your organization on your customers' performance and growth rather than their risk and churn. And I know that you will have significant improvements throughout your organization, and significant improvements of results with your customers. So with that, we'll ask one more poll. Burke, if you'll launch the poll. And the poll is asking about how much of your time is currently spent on reactive activities to prevent churn versus proactive activities. So how much of your time in a given day or week or month is spent in reactive activities? If you'll take a few minutes and fill that out, that would be great. Burke, is there any questions I could take, or should I move on to the next section? Okay.
Yeah, Dave, what would be some ways you feel like you could measure the success?
Well, I think we'll talk about this in the next section. But one is understanding their definition of a success, and that's what we'll talk about next. But one is documenting and understanding it, and measure success based on their ruler, not ours. Is a great way to do that, and then make sure. I always like to. One innovative things that I think that we've tried to do that's been different as we've tried to evolve, even internally for our customer success team. A lot of customer success teams measure even their customer success managers. They're comped on lagging indicators of retention and growth. And we've tried a new thing that's been really powerful and impactful in our organization, as we've started measuring the leading indicators, the daily leading indicators that we believe if our customer success managers do every day, it will result in the lagging indicators. We got this from a book called The 4 Disciplines of Execution. I highly recommend that to all of you to read. But we kind of took the model there and we implemented that across our customer success team to drive the focus on these positive performance indicators versus the lagging indicators around churn and some of those things. I'll just somebody's asking about the name. I think it's the 4 Disciplines of Execution, written by Covey. And I highly recommend it. Is a great book to read and think about how you can implement some concepts there with your customer success team and the rest of the organization, focusing on these positive leading indicators of performance and growth.
Hey, Dave, great. One more question from Todd. I thought Todd Smith brought up a great point. Where are some quick wins if you don't focus on churn? What do you think? What are some thoughts on, if we're not churn preventers, what should be some of the areas I'm focusing on as I'm building out my strategy for some quick wins in the growth and the health side of the business?
Yeah, I think some leading indicators are indicators around your onboarding experience, adoption, engaging with customers in business reviews, whether they be quarterly or whether you're trying to scale them. Having the ability to, how often you're even having conversations about your customers' goals and objectives and following up. So different activities like that. I see one here that says, Emmanuel's asking if NPS is valuable. I find NPS as an indicator, not the indicator. Let's put it that way. I think that there are multiple ways to listen to your customer and understanding how they are doing and whether they're getting a positive experience or a negative experience. So we look at NPS as a valuable stream of listening, but not the only one. And we don't put too much weight on NPS. We just look at it as one of the factors of understanding our customer's experience. So great. It looks like the poll results that most people spend about 20 to 40% of their time in reactive. And I think the goal is, how can we push our organizations and push the customer experience and our customer success models to reduce the number of reactive activities. When we're not going to be able to get away from all reactive activities. That's part of our job as well. But to minimize those so that we're much more proactive across the organization. So with that, let's move on to section number 4. Thank you for the rich engagement online from the attendees, and we look forward to this next 2 sections. So the next one we talked a little bit about, we hinted this. The fourth mistake in building out your customer success strategy is not truly understanding your customers. This has kind of been a common theme throughout this, but again, one of the challenges we have is that we build solutions and we build comp plans and we build strategies, and we really don't understand what our customers needs, what they need, what they're looking for, what their challenges are. What they like about it, what are they comped on? We were fortunate to be at lunch with one of the executive sponsors at one of our customers yesterday. One of the first questions we asked was, how are you comped? And what are the biggest challenges that you're looking at this year? And what are your key objectives for 2019? That opened up a really rich conversation that helped me get inside of her mind and know how I can help her achieve her objectives. And so I love this picture where you see a customer sharing and somebody just genuinely listening, writing down and seeking to understand your customers. So a key thing is, how do you not only do this on a very consistent basis across your customer success team with your customers, but then how do you evangelize this information throughout your organization so that your team understands? And so I always say, understand, evangelize, and deliver to your customer's definition of value. Your customer's definition of success criteria, their desired outcomes, or their key business objectives. The reason why it's so important to understand your customer's objectives, their definition of value, is that every customer has a different definition of value. If we were to go to Kauai and stay at a Marriott resort, and after a week, all of us came back and everybody on this call told us why they loved that resort or they didn't love that resort, everybody's answer might be a little bit different. Some may say, I love the beds, are so comfortable, the linens are just the best. Others may say, I love the beach. Others may say, I love the pool or the service. Everybody might have a different lens in which they are judging their definition of value or why they loved a product or service or experience. So it's really important for you to make sure that you understand, that you capture them, that you write them down, and then you find a way to share those throughout your organization. One strong way that we've done that's been great and we've seen is to have a customer come on site and talk to your entire team. And let them be vulnerable. Let them be open and transparent to talk about the good, the bad, the ugly. And that's a good way to do it. The other way is to just simply have a process where you're able to capture success criteria, key business objectives, and others' goals, and then revisit those often. I love this. And then I love this quote by Bill Gates. He says, your most unhappy customers are your greatest source of learning. A lot of times we have a tendency, a human nature, that when we have a difficult customer that is really difficult, that we feel like is a pain in our neck, we sometimes want to just get them off of our plate and solve their problem quickly so they're not angry at us. But we really encourage our team and our customers to embrace your most vocal customers, because your most vocal customers will be your greatest learning, a source of learning throughout your organization. Listen to them. If they didn't want you to succeed, they wouldn't be vocal. I would be more concerned about those that are quiet. And so understand your customers, embrace your most vocal customers, and create listening paths and sources where you can listen to customers across many different things, whether it be customer advisory boards via MPS, via your support tickets, via phone calls, whatever it may be. Open up the channels of listening across your customer base. So solution is to seek first to understand your customers and then deliver to their needs. Okay. Burke, we got one poll. The question is go ahead.
Oh yeah, I just launched it. Yeah, do you consistently capture your customer success criteria and goals? And then maybe another question, it won't be here in this poll, is maybe you can put this in the chat, is how are you doing that? Where are you placing that?
Yep. I see a question from Matthew Berry. Maybe I'll just jump in and grab that, Burke. He says, do you believe that your happy customers are also a great source of learning because they are the reason you are doing well? Yes. So I agree on both of them. What I might, I actually feel like that we, a lot of times we ignore those broad spectrums. So I encourage you to listen to your most, your loudest customers, or those that are angry, learning from there to understand, but also spend a tremendous amount of time with your most successful customers. Understand why they retain year over year. Understand what value they're getting, which part of the products, and a lot of times doubling down on the attributes and the profile of your most successful customers will provide much more acceleration in your strategy than focusing on your churned customers. So we do a lot of churn analysis, a lot of churn, speaking about churn customers. And what I'm suggesting is definitely embrace your most vocal customers that are still your customers, solve their problems and make them advocates, but also spend a tremendous amount of time with your happy customers and double down on whatever's making them happy. Looks like the poll that it's about neck and neck, but a lot of people aren't capturing your customer success criteria. I encourage you to do that. Now, it's hard to do it in a lower touch model, but sometimes you could do that simply in mass by sending your lower touch customers a welcome survey, to where they can answer some questions, so that even though you may not have the bandwidth or be able to scale across a lot of low touch, in a low touch customer model, at least you're understanding their objectives from a broad scale and aligning to the themes of that segment of customers. Okay, the last one. I know we've got about 20 minutes left, or 19 minutes left, and it looks like we'll have a lot of time for questions and answers at the end. But the next one is being too fixated on the negatives. Now, why would I say that when I just said embrace your most vocal customers? Embracing your most vocal customers is a way to learn information. It's embracing them. But a lot of times organizations and CSMs and companies focus on the negative aspects of customer success. And like I said, we talk about churn and escalated customers. We created this brand, and Sam File, who's helped moderating this, and Burke, who are both on this call, drove this strategy to build a brand called CSM from the Trenches. And welcome all of you to join. If you go on LinkedIn and or Google CSM from the Trenches, you'll see some information of how to join the group and contribute to this community. Sam is a frontline CSM. He started as an intern and has grown to become a really successful and strong CSM. But one of the things that he noticed is that when he went out as he was progressing through his career, he saw that a lot of the content out there was meant for leaders. It was very focused on leaders, customer success leaders, CEOs, etc. And so he said, we should create a community for CSMs in the trenches to learn from each other and to learn from mentors and to be able to share. And this has been a great thing. What we found is that CSMs have embraced this because they love to learn from each other, and they love to collaborate together and to celebrate together. But they also, a big portion is that we've found that they love to commiserate, because being in the trenches as a CSM is a tough job. It's a difficult job. And so what we found is that their day is full of negative things. So they're bombarded with questions about red accounts and angry customers and NPS detractors and saving customers and executive sponsor turnover and escalations and downsell and at risk and product gaps and so on and so forth. This is what their day is like many times. And so it can be a tough time, because this is what the focus of the conversations and the focus on a lot of their efforts have become. And in fact, if you think about the term we use to identify the best outcome that customer success managers can give in an organization, it's stated in a double negative. Why are we doing that? Why do we call it negative churn? I'm on a quest to change the name. Why don't we call it positive growth or net growth or something other than negative churn? Whoever's with me online, let's hear it on the chat. Negative churn is a double negative, and it's focused on it's a positive thing focused in a negative way. And so let's change that. Let's find a way to start changing that so that we talk about our efforts and the hard work that we do and everything that we as a company drives in a culture of customer success in a positive way. So let's talk about customer solutions more often. Let's talk about outcomes. Let's highlight the wins. Let's highlight happy customers, not just tell their name. Let's show pictures of them. Let's video record them. Let's bring them to our office. Let's have pictures of customers' faces on the wall. Let's celebrate the promoters. Let's celebrate upsell and renewals, just like we do on new sales from the sales team, where they're hitting their gong and celebrating with their music and their dancing and lights and whatever. Let's do the same thing. If we want a culture of customer success, we need to celebrate success. And so we're excited to lead in this effort as a company, and we invite you to join us in celebrating success. Surface that more in your organization. If you aren't celebrating renewals as much as you are sales, then start this week by doing this. If you're not highlighting customers in your town hall meetings, then let's do that. If you're not focused on your happy customers as much as your churn customers, then focus on that. Let's celebrate success across our organization and establish a culture of customer success and celebrate it. We invite you to join us. And in that regard, we have a quick poll to see how many of you are celebrating. How many in your company does your company celebrate customer success? I just asked that quick question, and I'm curious across the audience how many do that. And Burke, the question, we've come to the end. We've talked about the 5 mistakes. We've talked about implementing customer success as a fix, and the solution for that is to build customer success as the center of your strategy. We've talked about letting your customer experience evolve organically, and we're talking about the solution is proactively designing an extraordinary customer experience. We talk about focusing much more on churn prevention versus we need to start focusing on our customers' performance and growth. We need to understand our customers more, and we need to celebrate success. Those are the 5 solutions for us to elevate customer success in our organization and truly establish a culture of customer success.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. When I look at these results of the polls, it looks like we have, 47% of the people, not enough celebration, but there are, a majority that are celebrating the success of their customers, and looks like 14% are still trying to figure that out. And so that's kind of the results of those polls. What's interesting, as you talked, when we bring back the results of the first poll that says, that product and adoption were the two reasons were some of the biggest challenges people that were on the webinar are facing, it really does seem like it needs to come back to the taking a positive approach to why are those challenges with the product? Why are there challenges with adoption? Have we identified the true customer pain point? Have we been selling the right solution the right way? And that's maybe, I know a lot of people have talked about this, but really truly understanding why someone stays with your company, and then really marketing that, really training and educating that, versus maybe we're still unaligned on what the value or the impact we're driving our organizations.
Yeah, I agree. I think adoption is purely defined based on aligning our solution with the customer's objectives. If we can do that, then adoption will follow, because they know that in order to achieve their objectives, your solution is the critical linchpin for that. So that's a key thing.
Yeah.
We've got just a few more minutes. I'd be open if anybody has any questions. Feel free to keep typing them in the Q&A or the chat, and we'll take one or two questions before we drop off.
One question I saw someone mention through the chat that I thought was pretty good was relying too much on surveys. What are some other forms that they can get information about their customers besides just?
Yeah, great question. So I think surveys, as I said, I think there are many listening channels, and surveys is one of them. Sometimes we rely too much on surveys, both giving customer survey fatigue, but also maybe identifying some false positives or false negatives in our organization that could drive our strategy the wrong way. I believe in surveys. I think they're one channel. I think you can do it through customer advisory boards. I think you could do it through customer business reviews, whether they quarterly or semi-annually or whatever. You can do it through on-site visits and other ways. There's a lot of different ways. You can mine data in support tickets and on social media. Certainly pay attention to on-site reviews, G2 Crowd and Trust Radius and others, where there's a wealth of information. All of these need to be considered as a whole, and they need to be put into context and used so that you truly understand the voice of the customer, but across all these different perspectives and insights.
Great thought. So Kristen Gray has a question. How do you self-advocate as a siloed CSM? You feel like you're stuck in this silo. How do I get out of that and reach out and get everyone, shake them up and get them focused?
Yeah, I think that the way you self-advocate as a siloed CSM team is to start telling the customer stories. And I think the best way to break down those silos, as I said earlier, is to bring leaders from across the company on site with you, or bring customers into your company on site to share their insights. So start telling the customer stories. Start advocating for them, not for you. And as you tell the customer stories, and if you tell successes from the customer's perspective, so rather than toot your own horn, maybe share when a customer sends an email, share that with like Ann said. Ann says, if a customer emails some great feedback, I send it to the management team or to a particular manager. Those are the great way to start advocating for customer success without within the silos. And then also quantify it. It's no question that customer success teams own a majority of the revenue in companies right now, and sometimes we just need to remind the company of that.
And when you say you'd want to own that number right there, right? So being able to own a number maybe helps you get to be part of that conversation a little bit more. Don't be nervous to own that retention number and be measured by that.
Yeah, don't be afraid to own a retention and expansion number. That's the biggest debate out there in customer success now, and that could be a whole nother webinar. But I'd say if it makes sense, if you've got the right team, if your product is the right level of complexity, and it makes sense for your team to own the quota for renewals and expansion, embrace it and run with it, and you'll see a powerful influence that will come by doing so.
Yeah. Awesome. I think any other questions? I know there's a few on the top KPIs, which I will actually provide a link to ebook that we wrote on the top 5 sections of KPIs and 5 top KPIs within those sections. You can also go download that at our blog at clientsuccess.com/blog. I just wrote a blog not too long ago that talks about these top categories of KPIs to help you kind of start to understand where you start to measure proactive customer success.
Yeah, I was going to answer one quick question with Debbie, and we're starting to see some. Are there any good strategies to operationalize the sharing of customer stories? A couple ways to do that is one is to create a Slack channel that's specific to that. Another one is to have somebody on the team have that as a core objectives, or even CSMs. That they identify customers who are having success. Maybe as you're listening to promoters come in, maybe it's calling up a promoter once a quarter and having somebody sit down with that promoter and writing their story and sharing it as a case study there, and measuring people on it. Maybe rewarding them for that. So if CSMs or somebody in marketing or something has a particular corporate goal to identify X number of company stories and success stories, that's a great way to do it.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate your time today, Dave, and talking through those top mistakes and solutions. We will be sending this webinar to you, this recorded version and the PowerPoint, so you can really get this nailed, talking through organizations on how you can implement these solutions to these mistakes. We appreciate you joining from all over the world. I saw people from, as we asked the question where you're joining from, this community is growing all over the world. We're excited to be part of it. We are passionate about technology, how we use technology and people to be very great at proactive customer success and driving growth within our organization. So Dave, we thank you very much. And for all those who are still on, if you haven't joined the CSM from the Trenches on our LinkedIn, search that group and join, and then keep the questions going from here. And we'll be sending this recorded webinar to you. Thank you for joining us wherever you are in the world. Customer success is the strategy. It is the growth engine to every great organization and every great brand. Thank you for joining us. Until next time, from the base of the beautiful mountains in Salt Lake City, Utah, I'm Burke Alder, and this is Dave Blake signing off. Customer success is the strategy. We'll talk soon. Thank you very much. Have a good day, everyone.